is up, everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be reacting to It's Already Over for Jack Doohan. Now, I'm excited to get into this video. I'm quite intrigued because yesterday my Twitter kept blowing up and it was all trending on Twitter that like Jack Doohan's Alpine career could already be over. He might not make it to the end of the season, blah blah blah. And I was thinking, what is going on? Like, where has this all come from? Like, I know that F1 teams can be ruthless with, like, if you're not performing, then they're gonna boot you out and replace you with somebody else. But like, the season hasn't even started yet. So I don't know. Like, if we're looking at the rookies on the grid for next season, I don't want to pinpoint anyone that I think isn't going to do well, because I hope that they're all going to do well and adapt to being in an F1 car and blah blah blah. But if we had to look at the list of rookies on the grid next season, I don't think Jack Doohan would be my pick for the driver that's going to struggle the most. I don't know. Like, we've seen Ollie Behrman in an F1 car, so we know that he can do well. So I'm not worried about him. Like, I'm actually really looking forward to him being with Haas this season. Who else? Gary Bortoleto. I don't know. I watched him in F3 and F2, and he did like insanely well in both of those. So I have a feeling that he'll do well. Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes. I don't know how that's going to go. To be fair, yeah. If I'm going to pinpoint anybody, like, you can quote me on this and we can come back to this video at the end of this season and be like, Susie, you were wrong, whatever. But I don't know how I feel about Kimi Antonelli being a Mercedes. Here we go. I'm just going to say it, okay? I just think, I get that Toto thinks he's going to be like the next Max Verstappen or whatever. But, I mean, we skipped him from F4 to F2 to F1 and a top team in F1. I don't know. It's not that I think he's going to fail. I'm just really scared. I'm just worried for this poor young boy. Like, he's going to have so much pressure on his shoulders. But anyway, that being said, that's the thing. I don't think I would pinpoint Jack Doohan as one of the rookies that would fail next season. But anyway, I saw it all trending on Twitter yesterday. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully this video is going to give me a bit of an insight. So I'm just going to shut up now and we'll get straight into it.
Imagine the scene. You've hustled your way through the ranks of motor racing. You've worked your ass off in doing so. You've garnered praise from people in the paddock and abroad alike. You've warded off a multitude of other drivers to warrant a place as, effectively, a backup driver for a Formula 1 team. And then finally, once that team caved into its Frenchness, you're afforded a shot at the big time, some 8 years after first starting off on your journey. Perhaps even longer than that. The reality is starting to set in for you. You are now a Formula 1 driver. You have achieved your dream. It's a sweet gig. But then, almost immediately after signing with said team, rumors begin to swirl that a replacement has already been lined up for you and could take effect as soon as 5 to 6
Oh yeah, because I saw that Franco signed with Alpine, didn't he?
Built up has plummeted. The career that you had cultivated has been
I forgot about that.
But the thing is, this ain't no hypothetical. It's happening for real. Right now.
Do we think he'll be replaced then? No, I don't know.
I don't know.
That's actually, I forgot about that. I did see that.
You know it well by its icons, or by its nightmares.
Oh my.
The stuff that makes it what it is, or who they are. This place has its sorting icons, just like any other place, I guess. Who would be the poster child for this place when it comes to motor racing? Well, one of them, at least, is definitely this guy. In the 1990s, Mick Doohan was the Australian hero. On two wheels, he slaughtered
I didn't even know that.
Truly the king of his time on motorbicycles. And despite the two disciplines being polar opposites of each other, almost, champions of this caliber typically find their way onto four wheels at some stage, and some even jumping straight to Formula 1 machinery, at least in a testing capacity. And Doohan was no exception, driving the Williams FW16 that won the World Championship just a year prior. Perhaps this day at Catalonia would be a stepping stone with which he could use to prove himself worthy of playing in the show. Of course, having built it up like a melodramatic queen, you just know that none of that came to pasture. He couldn't quite get on top of the car before the wall had a chance to get on top of him. Racing cars were a fleeting visit for him though, not something really within his wheelhouse. But at least being at that level of racing, you do make a friend or two, such as, say, Michael Schumacher.
Wow.
You know, 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher. Imagine that guy sleeping on your couch, at least before he tried to throw that shit out of a window. And that was the case for the Doohans. They were neighbours in Monaco, and whenever Michael came over to Australia, he would often camp out on the Gold Coast at the Casa de Doohan. They were close enough to the point where Michael would name his son after Mick and gave his 2 children a go-kart each. Having your first go-kart gifted to you by the best racing driver in the world while he was camped out on your couch kinda sounds like a fever dream after you've had one too many Twinkies.
Yeah.
But for Jack Doohan, this was the reality.
Wow. That's crazy.
Years later, little Jack Doohan
I didn't know any of
Australia
that.
and picking up trophies. The Doohan name was once again reigning supreme, but on 4 wheels instead. Kind of ironic, but you know, that's how these things go sometimes. Eventually, after wrapping up 2 Australian titles, he worked his way over onto the European karting scene, where he did do modestly well, but it wouldn't be long before it was decided, yeah, you know what? Let's see how he does in cars. Whatever backing Doohan had, it wasn't small, because in the first year of racing, he would have part-time appearances in the Italian and German F4 championships with Prema Racing, while launching a full-on campaign in the British F4 Championship, driving with TRS Arden. Objective number 1 that season would have been to finish ahead of teammate Dennis Hauger, because, well, your teammate is the one driver you must beat, but also because, like Hauger, Doohan was a Red Bull junior, and with an Austrian overlord that judges his drivers based on their Wikipedia pages, it's much easier to just beat everyone else to remain part of the team. And did he manage to do that this year? No. Hauger beat him by a point.
1 point.
You can feel the pain on that one.
Yeah, I
He did
just
win
got
3 races
goosebumps.
that
That's
season,
crazy.
and overall, finishing P5 in your rookie year, that's not too bad. But
Yeah.
by his own admission, it wasn't that great of a season from him. It wasn't made much better when, at the end of the year, he partook in the MRF Challenge in India on a part-time basis where he was really bleh. But he's a rookie. You gotta expect some amount of cobwebs to swarm this kid. Important thing is to learn from them and shake it off. Formula 4 was off the menu, and now it's time for Formula 3. But the proper Formula 3, not whatever the hell this thing is, partaking in the slowly dying Euro Formula Open Series, as well as the Asian F3 Series. As before, the main competition is your teammate, and in Euro Formula, he had Linus Lundqvist as a teammate. Doohan did have his moments where he was arguably faster, and this was in line with when RR Racing didn't put their engines on upside down. But anytime the conditions weren't perfect, Lundqvist appeared to surge ahead, and was certainly far more consistent, and ultimately, Doohan finished with about half the points tally of Lundqvist. The Asian Series was more fruitful with 5 wins to his credit, but he was beaten for the championship by teammate Ukyo Sasahara, who wasn't even planned to be in the championship first up, until High-Tech couldn't find any more drivers to deputize from within the Kremlin. A few months later, he would compete in the same championship again, only to be beaten in the championship again, this time though by Joey Elders, the only real creme of comfort being, at least he was able to finish ahead of his teammate in the driver's standings this time. For 2020, he was thrust into the FIA Formula 3 Championship, driving with HWA. One of his teammates, Enzo Fittipaldi, was kind of languishing in the championship with a handful of points finishes. His other teammate, Jake Hughes, did a lot better though, nabbing 2 wins and finishing 7th in the championship. Sure, experience played a big hand in that, but it's not unheard of for series rookies to finish ahead of said experienced teammates. And for Jack Doohan in 2020, this didn't happen. In fact, he wasn't even close. He wouldn't even finish close to his other teammate, Fittipaldi. When all was said and done, Doohan finished the championship in P26, deep in the bowels of midness, in a year that made Doohan himself question what the hell he was even doing in the sport, whether he even had it. In fact, in the main, the first few years of his junior racing career did not contain the hallmarks of a future prodigy. He didn't particularly stand out. Frankly, he wasn't the guy.
Oh dear.
In 2021,
this isn't giving me hope.
The guy. He signed with the Trident F3 team right at a point where they had started to become really freaking good. Throughout the year, he just went from strength to strength, driving in wins at Paul Ricard, Spa, and in the season finale at the shithole. He finished ahead of both teammates that year, but once again fell short of the title, losing out to fellow Red Bull junior Dennis Hauger. Although, on that note, Jack started to sense that Red Bull may not exactly hold him in the same light as what he did himself, with Marco and Red Bull choosing driver lineups based on astrology and whatever. Doohan left the program in lieu of a berth in another academy that was bound to offer him more opportunities, more favorable resources just as a racing driver, and better prospects for a potential future in the racing series that was his end goal, Formula 1. That academy was, of course, Alpine. From the outside looking in, this wasn't the smartest of moves. If Formula 1 was the end goal for him, why go to a team that, at times, seems to forget that they have a junior team? After all, they had not promoted one since their inception, so why should Doohan be any different? Well, considering they would afford him his first F1 test just months after signing with them, maybe this wasn't as harebrained as we all thought it was. Perhaps after the nightmare of Oscar Pastry, they were a little bit more determined. Formula 2
let's not forget about that.
reliable at the best of times, but it does look good on paper when you do win here. And for Doohan, it didn't take long. Driving for Virtuosi, he took his first win in the sprint race at Silverstone before racking up another 2 in Hungary and Spa. He also finished ahead of his teammate in the standings, even if that teammate was Marino Sato, a dude whose 2019 season would have you believing that he was something special. But don't be fooled, people. Don't be fooled. The smoke and mirrors that is motor racing has never thrown up as big a fugazi as it did that year. But irrespective, Doohan did look very strong at points that year, and it did seem to vindicate Alpine's faith in him. But there is a reason why I hold Formula 2 to the fire. Because when you're being forced to pay up to 3 million euros to go motor racing in a spec series, it would be nice if all the cars were, you know, equal and without faults. But while Doohan's preparations for the 2023 season were going well personally, Bruno Michel's steadfast stronghold on quality control would pay dividends when the season would actually come to a head. For the first few rounds of the year, Doohan's car struggled from what was described as a fundamental issue. He described it as such.
I mean, that's just so depressing. I can't believe you have to pay that much.
Deceleration, it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do.
I know that racing is expensive, blah, 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 but it's just ridiculous.
Speed, slow speed, whatever. Curiously, that chassis in particular was thought to have a history of problems, but as long as this spud-headed swine sweeps it all under the rug, NDAs work a fucking treat. He was also in a bad headspace. The self-doubt was creeping in once again, and he wasn't coping with a lack of results, and it all culminated in a plane crash in Monaco that really set the tone for how things were at that time. On the plus side, however, at least that no good, very bad car finally got the punishment it deserved. But after this round, he demonstrated resolve and managed to rein everything in. He capitalized on the absolute clown show of a title battle up the front to eventually worm his way back into a position where, if certain things happened, he could potentially take the title himself by virtue of 2 race wins and a slew of consistent results on the lead up to the final race in Abu Dhabi. It wouldn't come to fruition, but he would at least nab 3rd in the driver's standings.
Which is still
might have been the charm
good.
had he opted to soldier on in 2024. After all, Virtuosi looked pretty good that season, and his experience would have added to that, and very likely placed him in as good a position as any to take the championship. But instead, Doohan was left on the sidelines, waiting for an opportunity to come up. He did complete some FP1 sessions over the last couple of years for Alpine, and he would be doing more besides in the year 2024. There was even speculation.
I think that is sad that some drivers work their way through all of these Formula Championships,
and his racing program that year,
and then they just get nothing. They
his
just
objective really was simple:
on the
wait
side.
for the opportunity to arrive.
You spent so much money and you just left on the sideline.
Even if he were to just get a one-off to prove his worth, that might be enough. And he almost got it when Esteban Ocon and Bruno Famine engaged in a full-on internal civil war that threatened to have Ocon pulled from the Canadian Grand Prix. That ultimately did not end up happening, but Ocon eventually would end up walking away from the team at the end of the year. And after a long-sought quest to find Alpine's new driver, which included a shootout between Michael Schumacher's son Mick, the kid named after Doohan's pops, the decision was made that 2025 Alpine seat was Doohan's. It all sounds like a dream run and the beginning of a long and illustrious career for yet another freaking Australian. But hold the phone here. From here on in, this is where things start to get rocky. For you see, that shootout between he and the Mixter was thrown into question by Mick's uncle, Ralph. He lambasted the handling of said test, and the team in general, saying the conditions were not equal for both drivers. And yes, Ralph is more than qualified to talk about said things, even if he's not entirely bipartisan. He also suggested that Flavio Briatore had other plans for that seat, and he was kind of onto something there, because not long after Doohan's signing was announced, rumors abound that he was on a 5-race contract for the start of the year, and that Flav was looking at replacing him with Franco Colapinto as soon as that contract lapsed. You could take all of that with a grain of salt, but when Alpine announced Colapinto as their test and reserve driver for 2025, that kind of made everyone
I didn't know about the 5-race contract thing.
Doohan's cooked, because
but I knew
the media reports
that Franco then signed with Alpine,
into a reserve
but my brain didn't put 2 and 2 together
in due course.
until this video.
Considering they already had Paul Aaron and Ryo Hidekawa as test and reserve drivers, no team needs 3 reserve drivers. That is excessive. unless you have other plans for one of those said drivers.
Yeah.
And they especially would not go through all the trouble of signing him from a rival team who really did not want to let him go for nothing. And with all the speculation and links made pre-season, this really did just seem to be a way to shoehorn him into the team, to prep him as much as possible for the inevitable promotion. It's been said that Doohan's performances will be judged before such a decision is made, but forgive me if I take whatever Flavio says with a grain of salt. He's been rather flexible with the truth over the years in Formula 1, because, I mean, just look at the way he talks about Franco. It's like he found a long-lost son. And let us not forget the amount of money that this signing is sure to bring to the team, which is kind of ironic given where Franco came from. It appears that for Doohan, anything short of winning the World Championship, solving world hunger, and annexing Greenland would not be enough to retain his seat for the remainder of the year. There's something else too. Doohan commandeered Ocon's seat for the final race of 2024 in Abu Dhabi. In large part, and at least publicly, this was done to help his efforts ahead of the 2025 season. But there were also rumors that this was more of an audition to see whether he had the goods or not. And in that round, he struggled pretty noticeably.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Was that this was happening at a circus where he had over 1,400 kilometers of testing in a Formula 1 car. So we have to wonder two things. How high is Doohan's ceiling? And secondly, how high will Alpine allow Doohan's ceiling to be? Because on one hand, his junior career was very iffy. Most people know of his Formula 2 exploits, but not much beyond. Lest we forget that he was hindered by those shoddy F2 cars in 2023 and potentially stunted a championship challenge. But then, if the cars are that critical, where was he really? You then go back through the years, hoping to find some consistency, some nugget of proof that his pace was beyond question. But we don't really get that. Some may ask, well, how would Colapinto be any better? Well, Colapinto made waves in his debut to a point where half the teams were headhunting him toward the tail end of the year. Doohan's debut came on a track where he had much experience, in a car that he had driven before, and he still looked very average indeed. Then again, questions did arise as to how bad Ocon's car was performing before that guy decided to vamoose.
Yeah.
Maybe that carried over? What's my take on this whole thing? Who would I choose between Doohan or Colapinto? I mean, you know what my answer is. And it's the only time that Flavio Briatore and I will ever be on the same wavelength that doesn't involve a line at a buffet.
I was going to say, I know what my answer is too.
I think, or we think, really. What matters is
we'll
what
get to
Alpine
that in a minute.
thinks, Flavio thinks. And perhaps the line of thinking is to inflate the team's worth before its eventual sale in a couple of years. And it does appear that, despite the talk of Doohan being given his due chance, the decision has already been made. And that whatever Alpine's future is, whether it remains or gets sold to the Kremlin, Doohan ain't part of those plans. And that's kinda sad, because even if he thought he deserved it or not, his F1 career is effectively already over before it's even had a chance to begin, before he's even had a chance
kind of
to
depressing.
prove people wrong. Can only imagine what that must be like for Doohan though.
The pressure must be insane
for him. You will no longer be a Formula 1 driver. Everything you've built up has been pulverized into the dirt. I guess that's motor racing. This shit is less fair than life itself. Or am I just being melodramatic again?
Right, thoughts. Let's deep dive into this. I saw, I think it was about a week ago now, that Franco signed with Alpine. But I don't know why, in my brain, I just didn't put two and two together until this video. And then he said about the 5 race contract thing for Doohan. It makes a lot of sense now. What's going on? And blah, blah, blah. If I had my pick between who I'd want in that Alpine seat, you can argue with the wall, but I would say Franco Colapinto. Just because he did so well for being thrown into F1 last season, and he hadn't even done a full season of F2 yet, and he was already just like replacing Logan Sargent in F1. So then there was so much uproar at the end of the season, I remember, because he didn't have a seat for 2025, and we all saw how well he did. So now this coming to light, I'm like, okay, I wonder if this is going to be it for Jack Doohan. I knew about, so I didn't know anything up to like 2021 about Jack Doohan. But then I had watched him 2021 onwards in like F2 and stuff like that. So I didn't know any of that. That was crazy to watch. But when I think about it, I'm like, there's so many rookies. Like a quarter of the grid this season is rookies. Like that's just insane. There's bound to be. I'm not praying on anybody's downfall, and I hope that they all like do well. but there's bound to be one that just doesn't do well. Like, we've got Kimi Antonelli, Ollie Behrman, Gabriel Bortoleto, Jack Doohan, Isaac Hedger, and Liam Lawson is driving for Red Bull. So that's 6. I know Liam Lawson has had like a few races in F1, but my take on the Liam Lawson to Red Bull thing is I don't know if that is too risky. Again, I'm a bit worried to watch him at Red Bull just because like we watched him at the end of like after he replaced Daniel Ricciardo after Singapore. Let me just cry about that a minute. I was watching his races from like Singapore onwards, and I was thinking, like, I don't know if that's the right choice. And like, he would just get so heated over the radio about like every little thing. I don't know. It concerns me. Okay, I'm just going to say that it concerns me. But again, I could be wrong. Nobody knows what's going to happen this season, so this is just all waffle, if you like. Like, I could be wrong, and they could all do really well this season. Who knows? But yeah, if I'm gonna look at the rookies this season and worry about a few of them, I'm going to be concerned about Kimi Antonelli driving with Mercedes, Liam Lawson driving for Red Bull, and now I'm concerned about Jack Doohan. More so the fact that if that like 5 race contract thing is true, that's a lot of pressure for somebody. So is he going to do well under that pressure? Is he going to crumble under that pressure? Who knows? We'll just have to see. We've got like 2 months until F1 comes back, so who knows. But I did really enjoy that video, so thank you to the people who requested this video. And with that being said, if you have any other videos that you'd like me to react to, drop them in the comments. I'm working my way through everybody's suggestions at the moment. If you did want to check out any of my other socials or become a Patreon member and get early access to videos like this or top priority viewer suggestions, then you can do all of that down below. But I hope you enjoyed today's reaction, and I will catch you next time for the next one. Bye.